I'm Dwight Drummond. Tonight, we are hearing from parents of survivors as they struggle to comprehend the latest shooting rampage in America.
And having to explain to him why he had to hide under his desk for half of the day is very hard.
He was dropped out of school. He had no criminal history that we've been able to find.
We will take you to Texas, where nearly 24 people, most of them children, were gunned down inside an elementary school. Plus,
you drive around, the boulevards in some neighborhoods are just stacked with debris. People have been trying to clear off their property.
Peterborough declares a state of emergency as the city struggles to deal with the impacts of Saturday's storm. And
the billboard companies have really good lawyers, really high-paid, talented lawyers, and they scare the city.
One man's long-running battle against Toronto's billboards is now the focus of a documentary. It has been a day of sadness, mourning, and anger across the United States. Many political leaders, including the U.S. president, are once again calling for stronger gun laws, while others are blaming mental health issues for yesterday's mass shooting in Texas. Chris Reyes has the latest.
In Uvalde, Texas, a community overwhelmed with grief. Parents and loved ones waited overnight for updates. At a nearby civic center, many remain.
Evil swept across Uvalde yesterday.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott shared new details about the investigation in the aftermath of Tuesday afternoon's deadly shooting at Robb Elementary School. Police say the gunman barricaded himself in one classroom, then opened fire. All the victims were part of the same fourth grade class, the children aged 7 to 10 years old.
The first thing that happened was that the gunman shot his grandmother in the face. She then contacted police. The gunman fled, and as he was fleeing, he had an accident just outside of the elementary school, and he ran into the school.
The suspect, who has been identified as Salvador Ramos, was shot and killed by authorities. Ramos was armed with an AR-15. Officials say he posted on Facebook 30 minutes before the shooting, declaring his intentions.
He was dropped out of school. He had no criminal history that we've been able to find or detect at this particular point. He lived with his grandmother, Celia, who is 66 years old.
The grandmother remains in hospital. Police are collecting DNA to help identify victims.
Yeah, it is very hard. I can't imagine going through that with one of my grandkids. My heart is broken for the parents here in Uvalde. It's never thought something like this would happen in a small town and friendly as Uvalde.
The deadly shooting happened just 2 days before summer break. The school superintendent praised the teachers for cradling kids during the attack and guiding them to safety.
They did heroic things yesterday, and they are always very humble, but they are truly humble heroes.
Police said all the victims of the shooting have now been identified and all parents have been notified about their children. Police have yet to release any details on the possible motive behind the attack. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
The CBC's Magda Gabasalassi is on the ground tonight in Uvalde, Texas. And Magda, what more are we learning about the victims?
Well, Dwight, when we first heard that number, 19 children and 2 teachers, of course, that is a shocking, shocking number. But then you start to hear the names of these victims. We start to learn a little bit more about what they were like, what they loved, who they loved. And that's what is happening today. So one of those victims is 10-year-old Jose Flores Jr. His father said that he, like a lot of children, loved video games and baseball. There was also 10-year-old Lexi Rubio, and her family said they were just celebrating her recently for making the All-A honor roll list, and now they are grieving her loss. Her father says he doesn't want her to be just a number, and he wants some sort of resolution. Take a listen to what he told this reporter about what that means.
Violence, guns. I'm a cop. I'm a deputy here in Uvalde County. This is enough. This is enough. No one else needs to go through this. We never needed to go through this, but we are. Thank you.
That father grieving, so many families grieving today, including the family of 44-year-old Eva Morales. She was one of the two faculty members that were shot and killed in this shooting. And what we've heard is that she's been a long-time teacher, that she loved being outdoors, loved hiking, and that she loved being a mom as well. Dwight?
Just situation's just heartbreaking down there. What more are we learning then, Magda, about the shooter and the investigation to this point?
Well, up until now, what we've been hearing is that the shooter, at least at this point, they don't believe he had a criminal record. They're looking at possibly something as a juvenile record, but right now they say they don't believe he has a criminal record. He was 18 years old. He legally bought 2 guns in the days leading up to this, and one in which that he took in there and had more than 200 rounds of ammunition. We know that he legally bought these guns, and before showing up at the school, authorities say that he shot his grandmother, and he posted about it on Facebook that he was going to do this, and then he also put up a post saying that he was going to shoot up an elementary school. Eventually he crashed his vehicle, and eventually he ended up going into this school where this mass shooting took place, and he was shot. Now obviously this is sparking the conversation around gun control again, but really the governor here is trying to steer away from that, trying to make this more about mental health. Take a listen.
Ask the sheriff and others an open-ended question, and got the same answer from the sheriff as well as from the mayor of Uvalde. The question was, what is the problem here? And they were straightforward and emphatic. They said, we have a problem with mental health illness in this community.
Now, there was a moment of conflict during the news conference earlier today where Beto O'Rourke interrupted the news conference, and he's a former representative, U.S. representative, also hoping to go against Abbott in the governor race later this fall. And he essentially called out officials, said that it was on you when he was speaking to Abbott, and he is one that's been calling for gun control. Take a listen to what he said. We don't have that clip for you, but again, he's been calling for gun control, and others as well. Of course, we've heard from President Joe Biden, who has also been calling for Congress to push stronger gun regulations. And we know that Biden and the First Lady are expected to be coming to this community in the coming days.
CBC's Magda Gabriselassie live in Uvalde, Texas for us tonight. Magda, thank you. U.S. President Joe Biden and the U.S. First Lady will be going to Texas, as Magda just said, to meet with the families in Uvalde. And as he made that announcement today, Biden once again called for meaningful action to strengthen gun laws.
We must ask, when in God's name will we do what needs to be done to, if not completely stop, fundamentally change the amount of the carnage that goes on in this country? The idea that an 18-year-old can walk into a store and buy weapons of war designed and marketed to kill is, I think, just wrong. It just violates common sense. Even the manufacturer, the inventor of that weapon, thought that as well.
We have more coverage of the Texas mass shooting on our website. To get the latest updates and reaction, go to cbcnews.ca. Thousands of residents in Peterborough have been without power for the past 5 days after that devastating storm that ripped through southern Ontario on Saturday. Now, last night, the mayor declared a state of emergency. Greg Ross has the details.
Burke Lush's SUV is still pretty banged up. He watched his neighbor's tree fall on top of it during the storm Saturday.
Just a great big smash as the tree started to split apart, and then hearing it crash on the side of the truck.
His entire neighborhood has been without power ever since, but he says they've been working together to get through it, doing things like sharing generators and helping each other remove debris.
Right away, we were up on roofs Saturday, even as it's raining, because the rain was pouring in through some of the roofs, and you know, everybody just pitched in.
This woman was at her cottage all week and came home today to find out that 2 giant pine trees in her front yard had toppled over.
This is the first we've seen.
It's
well, I'm glad it didn't fall in the house.
Scenarios like this have been playing out all week around Peterborough.
We'd guess that there's still, you know, a couple thousand homes without power.
Last night, Mayor Diane Therrien declared a state of emergency.
Declaring a state of emergency provides the municipality with a little bit more flexibility to deal with some decision makings. We've opened some facilities for people to be able to access showers. You know, we're worried about people that have mobility issues, especially in higher rise buildings if the elevators are down. Worried about people being quite isolated that way.
Many with power have been pitching in to help out, like this donut shop that set up a charging station outside their front door.
It was like a little spot, like people were hitting it all day and coming in and getting a coffee and sitting out there for an hour and chatting with each other and charging their phones.
The mayor says she expects to be in a state of emergency for at least another week as crews continue to try and restore power and clean up the destruction left behind by the storm. Greg Ross, CBC News, Peterborough.
Toronto District School Board trustees will vote tonight on a controversial change to specialty programs. The change would remove exams and auditions from the admissions process in schools that specialize in programs like math, science, and dance. Chris Glover has the details and the reaction.
Grade 11 student Sophie Eisberg Marshall fought hard to become a dance major at an art specialty program. She did a written submission, an audition, and an interview to get in. She worries the quality would deteriorate if the application process was stripped.
You would also have the students who aren't as passionate and just thought it would be a fun thing to do to make high school more interesting and more manageable. And there's really no way to see that in a lottery system. Everyone just gets lumped together.
Tonight, trustees will vote on a Toronto District School Board recommendation to remove things like assessments and tryouts, instead using expressions of interest to get into the nearly 40 specialty programs across the city. Alan Tang teaches a special science program and says the assessments are designed to test for passion and raw talent.
The interest potentially may not be from the student. It may just be from the parents. So when you have an application process where the students have to perform in some way, it also shows whether they're actually truly interested.
The TDSB says if the change is approved, when programs are oversubscribed, applicants would be randomly selected with priority for underrepresented communities.
Having said that, there are no specific numbers or targets or anything like that. It's just something that really should be considered as we look to revise this admissions process.
TDSB statistics show white and Asian students are overrepresented in many specialty programs, while black students are underrepresented. But the Urban Alliance on Race Relations says funding specialty programs in every neighborhood is the better solution.
Trustees that are not addressing the core issue, and so tonight's vote is really just a band-aid solution to solve a real problem.
Students have also protested, calling for the specialty programs to start even younger to level the playing field.
It's really upsetting that it's likely that it's going to get passed because it seems like they haven't been listening.
If approved tonight, the new process would be in effect for September 2023. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Canadian musician Jacob Hogard was testifying in his own defense again today in Toronto. The former Headley frontman is accused of 2 counts of sexual assault and 1 of sexual interference. He denies all charges. Eli Glasner reports.
As the cross-examination of Jacob Hogard continued, the Crown focused on whether Hogard should be trusted. The former singer from the rock band Headley has pled not guilty to sexual assault charges concerning 2 women. He testified about the details of his rock and roll lifestyle, the easy hookups and casual affairs wherever the band played. Hogard admitted to lying to both of the accusers, telling one of them he loved her, lying to get them out of the hotel room on separate occasions. He admitted to deleting text messages from his phone, hiding women's phone numbers under men's names, and lying about the affairs to the woman who would become his wife. The Crown asked how the jury can believe him when he says the women in question consented, adding, "Are you lying now and saying they consented to get out of another difficult situation?" Hogarth replied, "I'm only telling the truth right now." Hogarth remained on the stand as the defense was given the chance to re-examine him. Hogarth's lawyer asked if he'd ever testified under oath before. Hogarth said he knew it was a crime to lie, adding, "To be honest, I've lied in the past to get out of uncomfortable situations and to cheat on my girlfriend and hope she doesn't find out, and I'm not proud of it. But this is a whole different ballgame." Hogarth's lawyer also brought up the issue of consent, with again Hogarth insisting he knew the women consented from a combination of verbal language and body language. Today, the jury also heard from a limo driver who picked up the 16-year-old accuser and drove her home from the Toronto hotel, and who remembers her being quiet on that ride home. Closing arguments to the jury are scheduled to begin this Friday. Eli Glaster, CBC News, Toronto.
York Regional Police launching Project Erase today, the annual campaign to combat street racing and stunt driving.
Utilizing helicopters, unmarked vehicles, and the deployment of specially trained officers, our mission is to change this aggressive and dangerous driver behavior.
Police releasing video today to drive home their point. It was shot from the police helicopter earlier this month and shows a driver doing donuts on a street. The car then speeds onto a highway and travels along the shoulder, at times reaching 200 kilometers an hour. At one point, the driver narrowly avoids a collision at an intersection. Police eventually caught up with the 19-year-old. He's now facing a long list of charges, including flight from police, dangerous driving, and stunt driving. His license was suspended and the vehicle impounded. Police are asking that you call 911 if you see dangerous driving. Toronto is officially looking for a new police chief. The Police Services Board putting out the call to replace interim Chief James Raymer, who has served in the role for the past 2 years now. Jessica Ng has the details.
A new posting for the position of Chief of Police in Toronto says the service is seeking a progressive, strategic, and inspirational individual for the job. The search for a new chief comes almost 2 years after Mark Saunders announced he was leaving.
This was by far the most extensive public consultation process that the board has ever conducted.
That process included an online survey with hundreds of responses and over 30 focus groups. The result, a list of 6 qualities for an incoming chief.
Somebody who was not happy with the status quo, recognized the importance of constant reform, change, and innovation, and was prepared to lead that.
The police board also held 4 public consultations in Scarborough, North York, Etobicoke, and downtown. Today, people shared their hopes for the new chief.
A police chief who goes against corruption, who cares about the impoverished area, somebody who goes against racism and discrimination, somebody who's not afraid to stick up against his own police.
If they're gonna take all the salaries, then they should be available and present in the hood. The way they're sort of doing it now, they don't seem to interact with the community.
In 2020, the police board approved 81 recommendations for police reform. The service has been working on implementing those changes. And previous board chair Alok Mukherjee says whoever fills the role of chief needs to be seriously prepared to lead that change.
The new leader has to be comfortable with the idea that conventional policing status quo is not maintainable.
Interim Chief James Raymer has been in the position since August of 2020 and has said he would not be seeking the job permanently. Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
That humidity that we were talking about coming back yesterday, I don't feel like it's arrived yet, Colin.
Yeah, no, we'll really start to feel that, Dwight, coming in as we go through the overnight and into Thursday. So I think let's meet back here tomorrow evening and see how you feel as you find those dew points going up. You know, today we saw our temperatures kind of close to seasonal for most of us. You notice a little bit warmer towards Peterborough and Kingston at 22, some low 20s there where the clouds hadn't quite pushed in. Of course, course, becoming overcast for the GTA, but it's not only that. We've also got the easterly breeze, so off the lake, that keeps the temperature a little cooler and feeling a little bit cooler. And then there's the rainfall that is moving in. Now, the heavier rain here is to the north of us across Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, and it's continuing to track northward. However, just getting tagged by an isolated shower or two coming through the GTA this evening. We're certainly seeing that risk, and you can see it there on the radar. Had a few of those lighter showers pushing through southwestern Ontario. Once that moves through, there are some embedded thunderstorms or that risk. So even in the overnight hours, especially southwest, we could see a few of these bubbling up and crossing the international border. But again, most of the pull with this wave of this system is northward. So a lot of it goes around the GTA and we get into the heavier rains up towards cottage country. However, by the time we get into tomorrow, especially as the day wears on, we get into a better chance of getting into some rain showers or even some isolated thunderstorms coming our way. So that's Thursday and then includes into Friday as well. Tonight, 14, 24, but Dwight feeling closer to 29 tomorrow.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
The Ontario Green Party leader came out of COVID isolation today and headed straight to Parry Sound, Muskoka. It's a riding the party thinks it can win. It would mean doubling the number of Green MPPs at Queen's Park. Lorena Redekop has more on the party's hopes for this election.
How are you, sir? An enthusiastic welcome for Mike Schreiner with green dreams for this campaign volunteer.
At the very least, we're going to double the Green Party down there at Queen's Park. Guarantee.
But their meetup right beside a sign for their main competition. Today, leader Mike Schreiner lent a hand in what's seen as a two-way race with the PCs. That party's longtime MPP isn't running this time. The Liberals don't have a candidate, and the Greens' Matt Richter, a teacher, came in second the last time.
7-point plan to support Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Today, the party announced a plan specific to the area, including small business support and flood protection. The party believes it can grow this time.
Matt Richter in the 2018 election finished actually slightly better than I did in the 2014 election in Guelph. And we know what happened in Guelph in 2018.
Good morning, it's Doug Ford calling. How are you?
The PC leader made a stop in the riding on Sunday, working the phones to support his candidate, Bracebridge Mayor Graydon Smith. He attacked the Liberal leader for not fielding a candidate.
We see the Greens, they're benefiting from the slide with Mr. Del Duca, but let's make no mistake about it. Graydon is going to win this riding.
The Greens are also hoping to pick up another riding, University Rosedale. Schreiner name-dropped candidate Diane Sachs during the debate.
By the way, Mr. Ford, you fired the wrong environment commissioner.
Last week, the former environment commissioner took Schreiner's place at an event supporting nurses when he went into COVID isolation.
We're working really hard all day, every day. It's very exciting. There's so much momentum.
Back in Parry Sound, Muskoka, the Greens hope the timing is right.
Of course, I'm not happy with what the PCs have done, and so I do like the platform of the Greens.
Locally, there's no Liberal candidate. That's what people want to vote for, but Matt's been around a long time, and he's been doing, amazing work for us.
With party leaders showing up in this riding, it's a sign the campaigns feel some extra face time could be the difference in a tight race. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
At a campaign event in Brampton, PC leader Doug Ford was asked about the climate and whether climate change will mean more severe storms like the one this past weekend that swept across the province.
I believe in climate change. Let's make that clear. And we're doing everything to prevent it by building electric vehicles, having investment into the battery plants. So we're really focusing on everything we can.
Ford said what happened over the weekend was a tragedy. He thanked the hydro crews that have been working for days to restore power to hundreds of thousands of customers across Ontario. NDP leader Andrea Horwath was out in Peterborough today visiting areas hard hit by the storm. She says incidents like these reinforce the need to tackle the climate emergency and that she'll do whatever she can to help residents in need.
Anything that we could possibly do to support you, we will. We know that there's some things that need to be fixed around our provincial response to disasters, and we're committed to doing those things so that people can get financial relief quicker and municipalities can get provincial support more quickly.
Today was Horvath's first day of in-person campaigning in nearly a week after testing positive for COVID-19. Earlier in the day, she made an announcement in Etobicoke pledging that her party will offer mental health care for free and make it more accessible to post-secondary students. Meanwhile, Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca was in North York today, where he criticized Doug Ford for what he says was a lack of support to small business owners during the pandemic.
When he's had a choice to continue to stand with small business owners, he has repeatedly chosen to side instead with giant retailers, big box retailers, giant corporations, all of his buddies who are some of his biggest political donors.
Del Duca says his party will eliminate 2 years of corporate taxes for small businesses hit hardest by the pandemic and remove incorporation fees for startups, adding his government will raise taxes on corporate profits over $1 billion. It's a fight Dave Meslin began 15 years ago to rid Toronto of billboards that don't have a permit. The activist estimates there are hundreds of illegal billboards, many constructed decades ago. As Farah Morelli tells us, his fight is now drawing international attention in a new documentary.
Drive around the city of Toronto, and it's hard not to notice these billboard ads, high and low. But not all of them are actually legal.
These billboards behind me don't have any permits at all. They're not allowed to be there. They're in violation of the city's sign bylaws, which are designed to protect public spaces from, having billboards everywhere.
15 years ago, Dave Meslin fought the city on these two signs near Bathurst and Davenport. He says he was told they didn't have permits and would be removed. Yet, they remain.
For 15 years, the city's lawyers have just refused to take action.
Meslin estimates there are hundreds of illegal billboards across the city, and he wants them taken down. In 2010, the city introduced a new sign bylaw. The problem is, signs like these that went up decades ago were subject to different municipal laws. The city says it would have to prove that they had no permit back then or had been substantially changed without a permit. Councillor Josh Matlow says city staff have told him they're skeptical they'd be successful in court.
For the city to be scared to go through a court process, wondering whether or not they would lose, even if they haven't seen any evidence from the company, I think that's really ridiculous.
Meslin's journey is now part of a newly released documentary.
The one space that is supposed to be sacredly ours, belonging to the public, for the public, by the public, is, as the name implies, public space.
The film The Billboard Squad was released yesterday by Al Jazeera English.
You can walk around your city, and if there are things that you don't like that you see that are happening in your city, you have the power to challenge it, right? And that's really what the film is about.
I've been interested in billboards my whole life because I think it's really symbolic of who really holds power in a city. So if ordinary residents like you and me have power, then we should be able to design our neighborhoods the way we want them to look for us and our families.
As for Meslin, he says he's not waiting for the city to act. He and other volunteers have other plans.
So at this point, we're just going to take these over. We're going to start putting art up on them.
Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
There are fresh calls for British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to resign after the release of a damning report investigating staff parties held at the Prime Minister's official residence during COVID-19 lockdowns. Salima Shivji has the details and reaction.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson received the report this morning for a quick read before leaving for the House of Commons, where he stood up keen to explain the context behind the string of parties in 10 Downing Street during the pandemic when social gatherings were strictly forbidden. Senior civil servant Sue Gray basically described a behavior that she says is hard to justify. She pointed the finger at senior levels, senior leadership in this government for creating a culture, she says, that led to the office parties with excessive drinking when everyone else in Britain was forced to stay home and avoid social contact. The Prime Minister says that he accepts full responsibility, but that the entire senior management, his entire senior management, has now changed.
I am confident with the changes and new structures that are now in place, that we are humbled by the experience and we have learned our lesson.
The Prime Minister is hoping that his statement and his response today will be enough to quell any suggestions that he knowingly misled Parliament when he denied that there were any parties that went against the rules in the pandemic. And also, he's hoping this will swat away any anger from voters, but mainly from those in his own party. Tory MPs, they have the power to force a vote of non-confidence in their leader, but all signs point to them not wanting to go that route. Salima Shivji, CBC News, London.
The residents of Peel Region will have to say goodbye to a leader who steered them through the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Lawrence Lowe, Peel Region's Medical Officer of Health, is leaving his post to pursue the top job at the College of Family Physicians of Canada. Effective September, Dr. Lowe will succeed Chief Executive Officer Dr. Francine Lemire, who is retiring after 10 years of service as CEO. Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie says the city will be forever grateful to Dr. Lowe for his leadership and advice during a difficult time. Quebec's contentious new language law, Bill 96, is drawing widespread criticism but little political action. Many groups say it infringes on civil rights. The federal government says it might get involved in legal challenges against the bill, but for now, it's taking a wait-and-see approach. Alison Northcott has more.
Premier François Legault says strengthening Quebec's French language laws is a question of survival.
We are also proud to be a Francophone nation in North America, and it's our duty to protect our common language.
The bill has faced opposition, including from Anglophones and Indigenous groups who say it infringes on their rights.
We are still in the middle of trying to save our culture and language from all the assimilation and residential schools that you put my people through. Please, we understand your culture is in danger, but so is ours.
Under the bill, English junior colleges, known as CEGEPs, will have a cap on enrollment, and students will have to take more French courses. Small businesses will now fall under more stringent rules to ensure French in the workplace.
If I have to start being a police and giving people certain responsibilities to see if the French language is always respected in all operations, I don't have neither the staff nor the time to do that.
While the Premier insists it will not affect access to English health services.
It's a historical promise that we will keep.
This doctor says it will still impact his patients, many of whom are new immigrants.
It's going to make things much more difficult, more confusing, especially for the people who don't speak French properly. And it'll create a lot of panic and a lot of worry.
The province is preemptively applying the notwithstanding clause, shielding the entire bill from challenges under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. But the federal government says it won't rule out joining a court challenge.
The notwithstanding clause was meant to be the last word in what is in effect a dialogue between the courts and legislatures. It wasn't meant to be the first word.
But Quebec's Justice Minister says this is a decision for Quebec and that Ottawa should not meddle in the province's affairs. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
20 people with disabilities living in Regent Park have come together for what they are calling a MAP mission. They're mapping businesses and public spaces to rank and review their overall accessibility.
The Regent Park mostly is new buildings, and most of that is accessible. But we have some places that we need to do that. For, I don't know how to say, people who can walk or people with no disabilities, for you, when you go to a place, you don't notice what's missing. So we need that every place should be accessible for everyone.
The spaces are mapped out in the Access Now app and updated by community members with accessibility details. Organizers say the initiative aims to showcase both the successes and barriers that exist for people living with disabilities and how that can impact the way they live and work in their communities.
Accessibility should not be an afterthought. It should be something that is at the forefront of decision making when we talk to leaders about how to create diverse and inclusive spaces.
This community itself is an incredible space. It's a growing community. We just think it's truly important to have everybody have the opportunity to have the benefit of the neighborhood and the neighborhood amenities that have been created.
Organizers say they have had mixed feedback from businesses. They hope this project will prompt owners to start thinking about what they can do to make their spaces more barrier-free. So for those of you who love that wet heat, and I'm not saying I'm one of those people, it's coming tomorrow, you're good. Just seasonal for today, Colette says.
I think it's good for the skin or something, isn't it?
Yeah, exfoliate, I don't know.
Have a little bit of that humidity and moisture. Yes, we're going to be feeling just a little, I mean, this is pretty minor compared to where we're going to get to at times when we get into the middle of the summer, but a little bit of that stickiness in the air. We get into, I know there are a few isolated showers out there this evening. I'm not talking about that or the heavier rain that's to the north of us moving into cottage country. I'm talking about on Thursday, an increasing shower and thunderstorm risk as the day wears on. So there's a slight chance earlier, but really we'll see that heightened as we get into the late afternoon and early evening hours. We do have some wet weather off and on Friday, not the whole day. And in fact, more and more, it's looking like there'll be some really decent breaks. And then we'll push that out of here for the weekend and get rid of that system. But I do want to give you a heads up that we'll be seeing some of those temperatures surging into next week. So tomorrow it gets a little bit warmer, but I'm talking about into next week, some real rising in that temperature. So just looking as we roll forward with this in terms of what we could be seeing as we go towards Friday, a little bit cooler with that temperature as that system works its way through, and behind that cold front, 22 for our daytime high into the weekend. Sunday, we rise a little bit to 23, but notice how the oranges are coming up in the contours. And there you go. By Monday, it looks like some upper 20s, and it does appear as though we may be pushing towards 30 degrees by the time we get to Tuesday or Wednesday through there. Current readings looking like this. So we're sitting a few degrees below seasonal for this time of year. A little cooler in Hamilton there, 14 because of that easterly flow. There are some of what are mostly lighter showers, heavier to the north of us, however. And as this wave moves through, we get into some breaks. This is tomorrow morning, but then that chance of seeing some of these now redeveloping showers and thunderstorms through the day on Thursday into Thursday night, and then some waves still coming through into Friday. But then we get into the good stuff with the sun coming back for your weekend, which I think is important for many. So temperatures tonight, 14 for the low, that warm up tomorrow, feeling closer to 29, then comfortable for a few days, Dwight, before we get into the heat of next week.
And before I let you go, Zeb in the control room has corrected me. The heat doesn't exfoliate, it cleans your pores. All right, so now I know, Colette.
That's why we put our head over a bowl of, boiling or a pot of boiling water.
Our pores will be clean next week. Thank you, Colette.
Sounds good.
A video posted to TikTok captures the terrifying moments riders were stuck on a roller coaster for up to 30 minutes in Vaughan when a powerful storm swept through Ontario and Quebec on Saturday.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God, they're just stuck on it!
Lynn Ritchie, who posted the video, was in line to ride the Behemoth roller coaster when she received an alert to take shelter immediately. She made her way to the gift shop as the rain started. Ritchie described the situation as her worst nightmare.
It was insane. Like you could see that they were screaming, like you could see it, but you couldn't hear it because the wind and the rain was so strong. And like you could see the leaves coming off the trees and everything, and you're just sitting there watching them get pelted with it. Like they're stuck in the restraints still. They can't move. All they can do is like cover their heads like this.
In a statement to CBC News, Canada's Wonderland said ride operations staff began to close rides around 12:40 p.m. due to the sudden storm. The amusement park says a power outage occurred shortly after, and several rides, including the Behemoth, were halted with guests on board. The Behemoth riders were let off about 30 minutes later. Luckily, no one was injured. As we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX closed up by 97 points, the Dow rising by 191 points, and the dollar traded lower at 77.90 cents US. We'll be right back. Michelin stars are coming to Toronto restaurants, and a world-renowned chef with 2 of those stars came to Toronto to cook. You might have seen Alex Atala on the Netflix series Top Chef. We caught up with him and his host, Toronto chef Michael Hunter, about their commitment to, quote, sustainable dining and how that led them to forage for food in our forests.
It is a new learning for me. I mean, even if I have been foraging in my country for long, be with Michael in a Canadian place.
Yes.
Trying to not only recognize ingredients, but see the smell, see the flavor, the relation with the man and the food and the nature. It's a new learning for me.
He's got palm trees back home. You brought him here to pine trees?
Yeah.
What did you guys find?
So right now, spring is one of my favorite times. You know, we've just been in the thaw of winter for, it feels like 6 months. You know, as soon as the snow melts and the maple syrup's done, wild leeks are like these little green shoots that are just coming out of the, and it's all in the same maple forest. So for me, it's just a very special time of year, the spring. You know, it's the changing seasons.
And you found wild leeks that we're going to eat?
So we found wild leeks that we're going to eat. We picked some garlic mustard. We found wild ginger.
Hold on, wild ginger in a Canadian forest?
It's a different type of ginger. It's just called ginger. It's not actually the ginger family.
Okay.
What else did we pick? We found some trout lily. We found a bunch of things that we were just kind of eating and exploring. You know, and some of those ingredients we chose to work with tonight.
You guys are chefs, but you also care about the full circle of our food. What is wrong with the way we're currently producing food in the world right now, do you think?
There's nothing wrong. Maybe values can be changed. Let me try to explain. We love money.
Yes.
We never throw away a single coin. Doesn't matter where you go. You went back home with if you come to Brazil,
you pick it up.
You pick a coin and you're gonna keep that for your lifetime. You never throw away. It is against of everything that we learn.
Yeah, we do not throw away money.
So we really love money.
Yeah.
Why you throw away food?
There's a lot of food waste. There is a lot of food waste.
Sometimes the food that we throw away, there's much more economic value than the coins that we never throw. So there's a new learning, new value, new something that we are trying to
teach us. You're trying to teach us. I mean, so how do chefs lead this charge? And how do we then at home make a difference in this? Like what kind of habits do you think are happening?
I think the first is just education, you know, teaching people, you know, whether it's to grow a garden at home and learn more about where their food comes from, or eating organically, you know, how to cook with leftovers, or, you know, prepare food in such a way where you're not wasting anything, or just being aware that, you know, there are people that are less fortunate than you, and you know, not throwing food out and trying to find new ways to use it.
I hear people say, you know, they don't eat leftovers. I'm the dad in my house, so I eat all the leftovers because I'm with you guys. We can't waste food. I've heard it said that you cook, and I think this is really interesting, you cook ingeniously and you cook indigenously.
Yeah.
So how does one cook indigenously?
We learn with our local people how they use all the forest, not only the ingredient. Because unfortunately, our relation with the forest just harvesting, never giving back. They can teach us. They have been in there for centuries. Yes. When we talk about biodiversity, maybe there's no meaning. When you taste biodiversity, can have a new meaning. Let's talk about orange. Kids knows orange everywhere.
Everywhere in the world, yes. Yeah.
How many people you know that are able to recognize an orange tree without fruit?
Not a lot.
This is disconnection. This
You're so right.
This is something that we might to learn. We're never going to give the right value for our bush, for our forest, if you don't know how they taste. Taste can be, kitchen can be, cooking can be super powerful to support local conservation and local culture as well.
It makes the ingredients that much more special, and I look forward to these ingredients like all year, waiting for them to come. Because you can only get them at that certain time of the year, and that's what makes it so special.
I remember driving in northern Ontario and I saw asparagus growing wild.
Yeah.
I didn't know asparagus.
Yeah.
Like
it looks different too. It's like kind of skinnier. Yeah. It's super interesting.
I've heard you say, especially you, Alex, that we're a tiny part of nature, but we do so much harm to this planet. From both of you, how do we do better? How do we do better? Especially when it comes to your specialty, when we're talking about food and eating.
Well, since my point of view is doing what we are doing today, tonight, celebrating friendship, celebrating difference, celebrate cultures, and make people delightful, and more caring about our planet, our future, our.
We only have one.
The beautiful, simple fact that be together.
Yes, and you, Michael?
I don't think I can say it much better than that.
Well, gentlemen, I'm looking forward to tasting what you guys are prepared for us tonight, and we appreciate the fact that you guys are chefs, but at the same time, you know, you're expanding our minds and hopefully making the world of food a better place. The city is celebrating the contributions made by new residents through its annual Toronto Newcomer Day. Speaking from experience, Deputy Mayor Anna Bailau says moving to a new country is very difficult, so it is crucial that everyone feels welcome and informed.
Ensuring that families have the supports, they have the information, they feel welcome, they feel like they belong, it's really important because at the end of the day, their success is our city's success.
The day was first proclaimed back in 2015. The city now says 50% of Toronto's population was born outside of Canada. Today, hundreds took to Nathan Phillips Square, where city staff held a ceremony for new Canadians, tours of City Hall, a newcomer marketplace, and information fair. And it was a great day to be out in Nathan Phillips, call it.
Yeah, absolutely. So nice earlier in the day. And then we saw, you know, some of that increase in cloudiness. And now here we are with some of the rain showers. The heavier rain, as I've been talking about, is really pulling north and has been moving across Lake Huron and Georgian Bay today. But there are still a few showers here to the west of the city that are kind of working their way through. So fairly isolated or lighter in nature. A few pockets where you'll get a little bit of a downpour there. But then this is kind of coming through. And then just a slight chance through the overnight hours of seeing a repeat of this. But tomorrow, as we get into the afternoon and evening hours, again, we'll see some development and even a few isolated thunderstorms in there. 14 tonight, 24 tomorrow, but Dwight, it's going to feel like about 29 with that humidity.
Ouch, and is it time to warn everybody that it's okay, we need the rain too?
Yes, sure, we do.
Yes, that time of year. That's it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back.